come to my attention that there are many Jamaicans who have no idea what racism is. Case in point, I made a response video to an Asian Jamaican and called him out for the disparaging tone in which he addressed the black majority of Jamaicans. And a lot of black Jamaicans came to his defense and called me racist for bringing attention to the idea of someone who is at the top of the racial hierarchy talking down to the people at the bottom. So let's get into a little bit of the history. From colonial times and post-independence, we have had a racial hierarchical structure that has not changed very much, if at all. We've had at the top people of European descent. We've had people of Middle Eastern descent. We've had people of Asian descent. We have people of who are light-skinned Afro-Jamaicans. And at the very bottom, we have dark-skinned Afro-Jamaicans. Are there dark-skinned Afro-Jamaicans who have moved up closer to the top of the racial hierarchy? Absolutely. There are some who have been able to either marry their way or buy their way due to their socioeconomic status into higher association, much closer proximity to the non-black elite. And one of the reasons we see many upper class Afro-Jamaicans who are so steadfastly fighting against policies and against programs that would assist the lower class is because they know that the only thing keeping them in proximity to this top of the racial hierarchy is their wealth. Without this wealth, they would not be accepted into this position in the racial hierarchy. So that's one of the reasons why we see many elite black Jamaicans who steadfastly fight against policies and programs that impact and that would support people at the lower end of the ladder, because they themselves, their position is not tenable. Without the money that they have, they would immediately lose proximity to these people in the racial hierarchy.
Now, good morning, good evening, and good afternoon, depending on where you're watching from. Shalom. Shalom, black people. Yeah, I love you guys. So a video was done by a YouTuber by the name Stephen Ochieng. Stephen Ochieng made a video that came to my attention, a video that I believe many people have not really come to understand the full meaning of racism, you know. And Stephen Ochieng in this video tries to address us that we have different categories of racist structures, you know. It's like a racial hierarchy that exists in the Caribbean country of Jamaica. You know, Jamaicans have really been known to be people who are loud, people who are very vocal, people who are energetic. In fact, the fastest man in the world is a Jamaican. The man, Usain Bolt, you know, is a Jamaican and he's of an African ancestry. So, despite all this, despite even the fastest man being a black person, it does not take away the idea that black people are looked down upon. You know, as I told you before, Stephen Ochieng says that there is a racial structure in the in the Jamaican country, in the Caribbean country of Jamaica, and just to cut the story short, he tells us that through this woman's video as well, they tell us that we have in the top of the hierarchy, we have the white Europeans, you know. We have the second one, we have the Middle Eastern people, people of Syrian and Lebanese origin. I didn't know Syrians and Lebanese also live in Jamaica. We also have Asian people. With Asians, mostly we have the Indians and the Chinese, and also the fourth one we have light-skinned Afro-Jamaicans, those Jamaicans who are light-skinned, yeah? And then the fifth one we have the dark-skinned Afro-Jamaican. You know, black or dark will always take the list, you know. Jamaica is a black country. Jamaica is a country of black people. The maroon people are the blacks. These are the people who founded this country. But they're down in the list in terms of respect. They are down in the list in terms of, you know, that which is okay. The time is they are down in list in terms of economic. They are down in the list in terms of economic opportunities, educational opportunities, political opportunities, and health opportunities. Because in these domains is where racism expresses itself the most. In these domains is where we experience the highest form of racism. Now this woman addresses in deep analogy how this hierarchy operates. I want us to watch this and then I shall get back to you where we shall also have a deep critical analysis. And sorry about the noise, sorry.
From my position as a dark-skinned Afro-Jamaican, I do not benefit from this racial hierarchy. And since I don't have 2 shillings to rub together, I cannot buy my way into it either. You know whose interest it's in to call people like me racist? The people who benefit from the system. The people who benefit the most from this racial hierarchical structure. It is a benefit to them to make you feel like your oppression is coming from people like me so that you take your eyes off them. But let me go back to a point that Jamaicans keep saying over and over again, which is, it's not about race, it's about economics. It's not about race, it's about education. It's not about race, it's about the government policies. Okay, let's say for a minute that it's not about race. What do you call it when the poorest, least educated person from Asia, from the Middle East, from Europe, from anywhere else in the world can come into your country, can get opportunities to set up a business and have access to economic activities that the dark-skinned people of that population do not have? What do you call it when people follow the advice to get themselves a skill, to get themselves educated, to get themselves upgraded, when people do all these things and graduate at the top of their class and then have to change their address so that they can even be granted an interview? What do you call it when your children are sent home from school because their hairstyle, the chiny bump is too ruly, because the way that their hair grow out of their head is considered unkempt? But Jonathan can have his long ponytail and nobody has a problem with it. What do you call it when states of emergencies are only talked about in relations to communities like Tivoli Gardens, but never Jacks Hill or Norwood? What do you call it when there are only certain communities that are routinely targeted for police raids, when dark-skinned Jamaicans are routinely held behind bars for the slightest crimes, smoking a ganja spliff, stealing akis, and there are other communities who, even though police have information of crimes being committed, they dare not enter to raid or to look for anyone there, much less charge them with a crime? There are many reasons why we continue to deny that racism is embedded in everything in Jamaica. My theory is that people are afraid. People are afraid that if they admit it, then they cannot keep saying, "I just saw it go." If they admit it, then they will have to confront themselves. They will have to look within themselves and ask themselves why they are not doing anything about it. To acknowledge that racism exists is to acknowledge that we have been and still are and probably always will be at the bottom of this hierarchy. And that is something many of us are not willing to accept. If we accept that racism exists in Jamaica, then that means we can't go to places like the US and Canada and tell African Americans and tell black people there that they are lazy and that if they work harder, they can achieve something, because you were working hard in your country and you couldn't achieve anything because of racism, and that's why you migrated. To acknowledge racism in Jamaica means that you have to lose the illusion that you are better than other black people in the diaspora, in African countries, because you just are not. Because you are not immune to racism, even in your black majority country. To acknowledge racism in a country like Jamaica is to acknowledge that this system of oppression is being held up by black people who look like you, by black people who have proximity to whiteness, by black people who want to maintain their socioeconomic status, and they are willing to help the rest of them to oppress you And that is what some of you can't live with. And that's why you say it has nothing to do with race. And even though I always make reference to the elite and the non-black of Jamaica, the fact is that there are a few of them who recognize that race is an issue. There are a few of them who have gone out of their way to stand up and to speak up for the people at the bottom of the racial hierarchy. I'm talking about people like Carolyn Gomes, who started Jamaicans for Justice to fight for the rights of poor black Jamaicans. I'm talking about people like Diana Macaulay, who almost single-handedly is leading the charge to protect our forests, to protect our beaches, to preserve them for the use of black Jamaicans, and to ask the government why, to keep pressing the government for answers as to why they keep selling out our resources to white people. I'm even talking about the Chinese merchants who in their communities are the ones who send people to school, are the ones who support community events, are the ones who the whole community, even more than politicians, they turn to because they know that this person, every money they make, they give back some of it. Out of every dollar, they give back something to their community because they recognize that they get support from the community make them who they are, and they give back to the community. I have seen that with my own eyes. So when you have people who come on the internet and call you fully dunce, you must know why you take that as a compliment. You must know why you feel that these are the people that you choose to support and not the ones who are in the communities and helping build their communities. It's important to these people who benefit from the system as it is to ensure that you feel that you and them have something in common, that you feel that they are on your side, when in reality, the only thing that you have in common with these people is that you both touch the $1,000 bill as it passed through the mesh grill. At the end of the day, what has taken place since 1962 is a very successful campaign for the minds of the majority, over 90% dark-skinned Jamaicans, to believe that race is not a problem, to ignore and disregard the very thing that is keeping them oppressed, that is keeping them poor. And the system is designed so that a few people will succeed. And as long as you see that there are black managers somewhere, that there are rich black people somewhere, that there are wealthy black people on your TV, then you think that you can be one of them. Meanwhile, you are working within a system that is designed so that you will not be that. And that's why over 50% of our university graduates leave every year, because they immediately recognize that this is a system that was not designed for their success. But y'all keep drinking the milk. Thank you for this comment, because the intersection of classism, racism, and colorism in Jamaica is a much needed topic. And one of the things that I learned when I started looking into the history of all this is that integral to the whole concept of Jamaica's development post-colonialism was that we not talk about it. Do you understand? It was conditioned. It was a conditioning of the people to not discuss this. All the research on race in Jamaica talk about this silent topic that everyone knows, like everyone knows that this is happening and no one talks about it. And that's why anytime the issue comes up, you will see a whole bunch of people say, this has nothing to do with racism. This is an American thing. We have classism, yes. We have colorism, yes. But there's no racism here. A bunch of people are running up and are not understanding the intersectionality that is going on. Classism, racism, and colorism are intertwined in Jamaica. One does not exist without the other. And they are all the children of white supremacy. They are all born out of white supremacist culture that was handed down to us through colonialism. It took the United States more than 150 years after independence to have its racial reckoning with the civil rights movement in the 1960s. Jamaica has not yet had its racial reckoning. We have not yet gotten to the point where the majority of the people who are being marginalized, the people who are being denied access to the resources of the country they call home, the people who every day are subjected to the ills of racism, classism, and colorism in Jamaica. We have not yet gotten to the point where these people en masse are prepared to stand up for their rights against the minority non-black elite. But I strongly believe that a racial reckoning will happen in Jamaica. It may not happen in my lifetime, but it has to happen, because only for so long will a peoples endure oppression. And I believe we are still being oppressed. And just as African Americans stood up in the 1960s and said enough is enough, I firmly believe that this day of reckoning will come to Jamaicans one day.
After listening from the sister carefully, we can tell that this is a case of classicism. Classicism is always rooted to some extent from racism, you know. Another domain that the sister was speaking of was the domain of colorism. Colorism and classism always tend to tag along together, and both of these are still roots of the problem of racism. The sad part is that when she said it is the fellow black people who are working so hard to ensure that the black people, the Afro-Jamaicans, dark skin, stay below. That is the part that touched me the most, you know. Let's remember the hierarchy. The first one was the white people, the white European. The second one was the Middle Eastern, or rather the Arabs. And these Arabs who live in Jamaica, particularly the Syrians and the Lebanese. The third one was the Asians who are from majorly India and China, you know. India and China holds the world's highest population, so it's by no surprise that they are in Jamaica. And now the fourth one in the hierarchy is the light-skinned Afro-Jamaican. They are black still, but they are Afro-Jamaicans who are light-skinned, you know. And then we have the dark-skinned Jamaicans. And he says that there are some dark-skinned Jamaicans who have elevated themselves, or rather who are on the high table. And what keeps them on the high table is the money they have, you know. By not having the money, they are as equal as the dark-skinned Afro-Jamaicans who are down below, you know. Another thing that I tend to have realized with the sister is when she complained, actually it was more of a complaint, when she said that these people should, instead of, you know, putting blacks down, or rather the dark-skinned people down, what they should do is let the money uplift Afro-Jamaicans who are black up, you know, make people who are like you, elevate them. And this is what we see other people do. This is what we see the Chinese do in Africa. They come here, they bring development, and they elevate themselves. This is what we see Indians do. Indians live in the same houses. Indian businesses are run by a family. You know, the white people, they do the same. But with the black people, we don't do that. I don't know what's wrong with this black society. I really don't know. It's like a curse sometimes, because the story is the same in different places of the world. Time is different, story is the same, and also in different spaces, you know. So it's like, is it an inherent thing we have as black people to look down upon ourselves and, you know, put someone else before us? I can't blame it on such people, because it is slavery, it is colonialism that has made these things happen like this. These things took a lot of years and a lot of time, and people were being born into them. Generations were coming in and out of this colonialism and slavery. So it was like a norm, it was like a culture, it was like a tradition to be a slave and to serve your master, even if it means terminating your own black person to serve your master. You know, these people, if they want to fire black people from their jobs, then non-black people, they use a black person to do that, you know, and the black person will gladly accept that role. It's not different from what these brothers and sisters who have money are doing in Jamaica. You should let your money work towards uplifting black people, like some black Americans do, like some other black people do as well in their diaspora. Jamaica is a country of black people. Jamaica is predominantly black. And if black cannot uplift one another in Jamaica, that's a big problem, because we can't say Caribbean without saying Jamaica. Jamaica is almost synonymous to the term Caribbean, right? This is a very big country. You know, it has a lot of heritage with the country of Ghana. It has a lot of heritage with the continent as a whole. And so uplifting one another as black people is a key thing we should be doing. Colorism, classicism should not be part of black people. That is my message from this video. I hope you get enlightened and you remember to place black people ahead. Place your own kind ahead. Charity begins at home. That's the nutshell. Charity begins at home. These are the people you are trying to impress. They don't like you. That's it. They don't like your skin color. Yeah. But the person who looks like you don't like them. This one is like Stockholm syndrome. Like Stockholm syndrome. Yeah. Guys, thanks for watching this video and see you in the next one.